Good afternoon, one and all. Thank you for joining us on this live Facebook aired show, which is Let's Talk TCI Real Estate. As usual, please like and share the page. I know that there are persons out there who would love to hear what we are speaking today about on this show. I know it's you're just leaving work. It's only 5:30. So I would say to anyone who is listening now, if you don't have an opportunity to finish the show while you're driving, please be reminded that you can always go back on the Facebook page and listen to it from start to finish once again. As a reminder, this show is geared towards educating us all, including myself, about all things real estate. Every guest that I bring on this show is connected to your real estate transaction in some way. So let us show appreciation to the guests and retain as much information as possible. Special thanks to Mr. Ed Forbes, who shared with us on the last show about protecting generational wealth. Again, if you did not have an opportunity to view that segment, you can go back on my Facebook or my YouTube channel, which is Vernica Delancey, and view it for a second time. Today on this show, we have a young yet qualified professional who will be sharing with us about quantity surveying. This person is Mr. Dominic Durham, who is the Managing Director of Future Build Consultancy. Before I go any further, I would just like to say again, if you have any comments, please put it in the comment section. If you have any questions, feel free to ask those questions as well. And if by chance we missed your question after the show, I will ask Mr. Durham if he can please just scroll through the feed just to see if anyone had a question. I normally say perhaps do it the following day because sometimes persons view the show late at night because of the timing, and then questions come on thereafter. So without any further delay, I would use this opportunity once again to thank Mr. Dominic Durham for being on our show, and I'll ask him to please introduce himself further to us today. Mr. Durham.
Pleasant good afternoon to all. Thank you, Vernica, for that very generous introduction, and it's a pleasure being a guest on your show. I am excited for the upcoming conversation that we are about to have, and especially with educating the public as it relates to my profession. So once again, thank you for that. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Dominic Durham, Quantity Surveyor by profession, background. I am the Managing Director of Future Build Consultancy, which is a quantity surveying firm in the private sector. And I am also the Director of Housing within the government under physical planning and infrastructure development. So that's a very brief introduction of myself. I guess we would know a bit more as we get on into the show. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Mr. Durham. So we will get right into it. First of all, I would like to say I'm excited about this topic. Doing real estate, there are so many questions that come to us, and there's so many times people are asking us to explain some of these terms, in some of these professions and the role that they do play in real estate, to know why they need to use certain people like surveyors, appraisers, etc. So it's always good to have that professional on the show to explain for themselves their role that they play in a real estate transaction, because I'm sure that you can explain it even more clear than we can as real estate agents. So I'm excited about this show today. So on that note, I am going to ask you straight off the top to explain the role of a quantity surveyor and the importance of quantity surveying in building and construction.
Good, thanks. That's a very important question because, believe it or not, a lot of persons do not know the role of a quantity surveyor. And quite often, I get questions on whether I do, land survey and that sort of thing. But just to define, a quantity surveyor is someone who protects the financial interests of a client for any project. So basically from inception to completion of a construction project, we are responsible for one, costing or estimating or giving a client a budget for that project, We are responsible for making sure that that project is executed within that budget. We do the contract management side of things to ensure that the project runs smoothly and we achieve value for money. And the project is completed on time and within budget. And we also do cost control, cost analysis, risk assessments of a project in terms of financial. So to summarize, it's basically the accountants of a construction project. We protect the client's financial interests. It goes a bit farther than that. Most quantity surveyors tend to go on and be project managers themselves. You can be an adjudicator, you can be an estimator, or a mediator. So there are different aspects of quantity surveying that we can dive into, but predominantly we are the numbers guys. So we would, from you get a design from an architect, which is the first step. The architect then gives that design to the quantity surveyors. We would then develop a project budget. So we would cost all of the elements. So we can basically break that project down into the number of nails you need and how much it costs. So we would give a detailed cost estimate once the development is designed at final stage. But basically we give a budget. We make sure that the project is procured for better value for money. So choosing the right contractor, doing all of the evaluating process, the tendering process. We draft, negotiate, and develop the construction contracts. So there are key elements within the construction contract that we need to manage to make sure that the project don't have cost overruns. So variations we manage, payment terms, retention, and all of the mechanisms under the contract that affects the money we manage. So yeah, that's basically in a nutshell what we do. So there's a lot. I know I said a lot, but that's basically it in a nutshell, really.
I'm laughing because you said a nutshell, and I was thinking like he was just going and going and going. If that's a nutshell, I wouldn't even want to hear the rest of it, but I would want to hear the rest of it. But there's a few things that you were saying that I hang on to while you were saying it. You were talking about, of course, when you get a drawing from an architect, you were saying you are the person who that person will come to in terms of providing a cost analysis as to what's going to be the overall cost of the construction. Beforehand, I normally would say, well, I always thought with persons that, okay, you would go to that contractor that you are using, and the contractor normally will give you that cost. What's the benefit of going directly to the contractor versus going to you as a quantity surveyor?
Okay, great question. Actually, the contractor comes in when you reach to your tendering stage or when you are about to choose who will be the person for the project. We would come in beforehand at initial stage. If, for example, you're financing a project from the bank wants to know from a chartered surveyor or a recognized or reputable firm that is on their list that the cost of that development to make sure that what they are intending to lend is sufficient to complete that project. So for the sake of the lenders, the sake of the client knowing their budget beforehand, it's best to come to a quantity surveyor, and then you would approach contractors, one or two or three, for the tendering process, and then the quantity surveyor will assess those three bids from the contractors to assess whether you're having value for money, or they're pricing it correctly, or they're not underpricing it that will cost you more money down the line, or they're not overpricing or charging you more money than they should be charging you.
Because you're going to make sure that that contractor, like you say, is giving you real value for money, because you already would have assessed the situation and know exactly what's needed for the completion of the project.
Yes. It's always good to have an independent expert to review the finances of the project, simply because the contractors, they are in the game themselves. I work for a contractor fresh out of university. I also work on the client side. There's a difference between quantity surveying on the client side and the contractor side as well. And we know the game. We know what contractors do to win projects, and it costs the clients more down the line. So if you have an independent expert who can assess and really pick those numbers to pieces and advise you beforehand, we would avoid a lot of problems and a lot of disputes. Believe it or not, construction projects, they're very adversarial. There are a lot of disputes and stuff that can occur, and it all as a result of money, basically. So, we are here to avoid that, basically.
And in talking about contracts, and you said you also produce contracts. So do you have a standard contract, or is that contract tailored towards the project?
Right. There are various suits of contracts out there. You've got the AIA, the JCT, NEC, FIDIC. There are so many.
Go ahead.
There's so many construction contracts out there. Mostly they are bespoke. When I say bespoke, you would use one from, the suite of contracts that is, most user-friendly to the specific project, and you would tailor it to suit, that specific project. I mean, if you're building a simple shack in the back of your yard, you're not going to have a 200-page contract. You're probably going to develop something that's short, it's to the point, it covers all of the particulars that you needed to be covered to avoid and mitigate the risk involved. And I have, contracts suitable for the various projects, and some of them are bespoke, and some of them are following the suite of contracts that is developed by institutions and stuff like that.
Right. And obviously it's important to have a contract because, like you said before, there are so many things that may go wrong or can go wrong within the construction process, and you want to make sure that everyone is protected.
Right. Absolutely. My advice to everyone is, whatever you're doing in construction or real estate, please ensure that you have a contract. People tend to deviate from the word contract because it sounds a bit onerous and a bit too much. People don't like to read 30 pages. It can be something simple. It can be a 1-pager, 2-pager, as long as you're covering the agreement to say, such and such is an agreement with Joe Bloggs to carry out this work for this amount of money. He started on this time, should be completed on this time, and the insurance and the payment terms are, and if he's delaying, what are the consequences? Simple stuff. It can be all on a couple of pages. So in the event anything arises, and when money involves, you will have dispute. And if anything arises, you can revert back to that one piece of paper and see, look, we agree that if you are late, you are liable to pay me any costs associated with you being late. Simply put, we've agreed that. So, if you have watermark agreements, people tend to forget, oh, we never agreed that, and that was not the agreement. But if you have a piece of paper that's signed by both of you guys, that mitigates your risk. But I definitely urge people to get a contract.
Okay. You also mentioned previously you were talking about some quantity surveyors going on to do project managing. What's the difference between a project manager and a quantity surveyor in that? I know you talk about the financial aspect, but also you do supervision as well. What's the difference?
Right. So the project manager, he's the main guy. He makes sure that that project runs on program, on time. He arranges all of the elements, manages the site, the subcontractors. He's responsible for the day-to-day running. The quantity surveyor is his support. He's the finance guy next to him. So everything that he does, the quantity surveyor is there to say, this is going to cost you that. That is not in our budget. This is in our budget. What you can do, what you can't do, contractually, what you should be doing. Because most project managers, they are focused on delivering the project on time and quality, but they're not conscious of the money. So they are working and working and working. So you need the guy next to you to say, well, hold on, I can procure this cheaper for you without compromising quality. Let me get this from here. Save us, a bit of money here. Hold on, don't instruct this guy to carry out works on site without a contract. Where's his insurance? If something goes wrong, the client is going to blame us. Where are we going to get the money from? So we are his, support financially, contractually, and to help him to avoid any sort of risk involved in the project as it relates to, costs or damages or any sort of consequences.
Okay, cool. Of course, this is a show that caters to all things real estate. So we're just thinking not just bigger projects, but we also thinking smaller projects because we want even the smaller person to know that, hey, what role you play in their real estate transaction in terms of building construction. And most times people think quantity surveying, we think the bigger projects. Just if you can fine tune just a little bit more, like from what you've said so far, I've gathered a lot in terms of what role you play in the smaller projects. But if you can break it down a little bit more for me, why would a smaller person who's just building, just say a regular 3-bedroom home, need a quantity surveyor?
Okay, brilliant. So a lot of my work is geared towards actual smaller dwellings and homes. So my role in those type of projects is, one, we would do the initial cost estimation, whether it's for the contractor or for the person who's building themselves in terms of establishing the budget. So once the contract is procured, they find someone to build the house. Our involvement would be to monitor the project financially. So every month, the contractor would be asking you for payment, right? So our role is to get out there and do a valuation or assess that project on a monthly basis to ensure that the contractor is claiming for a reasonable sum or for the adequate amount of works that is actually carried out within that payment cycle. So cash flow is a very important thing with any construction project. You don't want to overpay someone and it doesn't reflect the works that is carried out on the site. So we would come out and say, yes, Joe Bloggs is owed $100,000 because we believe the works that are here on site is valued at $100,000. And the next month he's going to come over, we want $200,000 this month. Well, sorry, this is not small projects we're talking about now. Let's say $50,000,
yeah.
Right? This month. I'll come out and say, well, actually he's done 30,000, but there's about 20,000 worth of materials on site. So, it adds up. So we do monthly valuations. We authorize the amount paid to the contractor on a monthly basis. We assess any variations because the contractors may come to the homeowner and say, well, this wasn't included in the bid. You asked me to add another window. It wasn't included. It's going to cost you $10,000. So our role is to say, well, whether that variation is going to cost you that. So, I'm going to be protecting the client's interest and say, well, actually, that's the same size of the window that's in the original contract. That window is $500, so it should be $500. There's no difference. It's the same spec, the same size. It's not going to take him any longer to complete the project. So we protect the homeowner's interest financially and making sure that the contractors don't really rip them off, if you would say. I've seen projects before where, persons have had contractors, they've established a friendly relationship and a lot of instructions were carried out verbally. Do this or change that. I want, instead of that, that door, we want impact rated double glass door, instead of this type of fixture, we want this. Instead of ceramic tiles, we want porcelain. So they're issuing a lot of verbal stuff, and the contractors carrying out these works, and then at the end of the contract, the contractor goes, here, this $160,000 bill. And the owner goes, for what? And there's a dispute for payment and who owes who what, and I didn't tell you to do this and I didn't tell you to do that. But if that process was managed by a quantity surveyor right throughout, you would avoid those sort of disputes and problems.
Okay, because you're talking about, you normally manages projects from start to finish. Is there any instance where you would do a one-off on a site visit for anyone just to inspect the site at, say, halfway through it to make sure everything is in order instead of being hired from start to finish of a project?
Yes, you're right. There are instances where, I've been employed to do one-off, or some people have agreed to make stage payments, like 3 installments for a project. So I've just been appointed to just value those 3 installments. Or some persons have managed it themselves and just reached the point where they needed an independent expert to come out and say, well, I believe this has gotten out of hand. Can you assess where we are to date? Is it valued at this amount of money? The money we pay to the contractor, is it worth it? And, is he entitled to these claims? And that sort of stuff. He's delayed. What are the consequences? So oftentimes we get called for the contractual side of stuff and valuations, on a one-off basis as well.
Okay. Yeah. So in doing your inspections, what are some of the building issues that you have noticed inspecting buildings? For example, there are certain things that should be ensured, especially with building near to the beaches, because of the salt air. What have you noticed about any construction, or what should people be concerned about in building near to the beach?
Okay, the Turks and Caicos on the whole has a high salt content, around the islands themselves, whether you're near to the beach or not, but more so when you're near to the beach, as you pointed out. Some of the problems I have identified during site inspections, they are simply, along the lines of where we can improve in our efficiency in construction. The planning department governs, what is built and what is allowed to be built through the whole application process and being granted certificate and a permit to build and occupancy certificate, etc. So they monitor and manage what is being built and what is allowed to be built. In terms of what I identified within my tenure here in the islands is that oftentimes I see some projects whereby we can improve on, for say, sustainability within projects. Efficiency, better use of space, using more environmentally friendly materials. We got to think ahead in terms of, future. We got to think about the environment. Even buildings that are not disabled friendly. We're living in a world today whereby, we have to have wheelchair access or disabled toilets or, ramps to allow disabled people to gain access to your building. We need to have energy efficient lights and dual flush toilets. So, if you're doing a number 1, you're not using the same amount of water if you're doing a number 2. So, stuff like that, they all add up. The materials you use, it don't keep your building very hot, whereby you have to use a lot of air condition to cool your building. So long-term running costs may be higher. And oftentimes people think that, okay, it's expensive to use this type of material, but it will save you in the long run in terms of, operational costs of that building. Those are the sort of things that I've noticed. I think, and what I always recommend is that we move towards, when I say greener buildings, I don't mean necessarily green buildings, but let's have a certification here in the Turks and Caicos, similar to, let's say, LEED in the US or BREEAM in the UK, whereby each buildings will have to achieve a certain level of sustainability. So that we are, in line with what's going on in the wider world in terms of future thinking and planning for the Turks and Caicos Islands. So that's it in a nutshell. Simple stuff. One of the things that I have quite recently learned is that whilst carrying out an inspection on a project, and you've mentioned near to the beach, and I noticed that there weren't any lights on the terraces facing the beach side, which was unusual to some of the other restaurants and condominiums, hotels and condominiums nearby. And I asked a question like, why aren't there any lights on the external terraces? It's going to be a bit dark out here. And the representative responded and said that, well, this is because the owners are very environmental friendly, and the lights here attracts the turtles from the ocean to come to the shore. And they have a policy whereby, none of their resorts would have any lights facing the ocean to avoid, attracting the wildlife towards the shore. And, things like that you need to consider with developments and stuff. And that was quite impressive. And I was really pleased by that sort of, gesture. So, that's what I think we should be moving towards, a more green and sustainable Turks and Caicos as it relates to infrastructure.
I also agree with that. And I found that a lot of people now, like you say, even we have a lot of international buyers who come to our shores, and a lot of them are also thinking sustainability with their projects. And I know they've asked, because one time I had a show with a property manager, and one of the questions, one or two of them had sent to me in advance, were actually about that. What can we do to be more environmental friendly and sustainable when developing our villa for other guests? So yes, that is a thing that we should be looking more into, not just as for the international customers who are buying, but also for us as residents on island, as we begin to think even short-term rental opportunities, because these are what our guests are also looking at as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, talking about your services and talking about international guests, visitors to the island and purchasers, your services obviously is very important for them as well, as I'm thinking about it, because they are always concerned about ensuring that the project runs smoothly if they're not on island to monitor it. So definitely, do you get a lot of those customers also asking for your services to make sure that money is being spent the way it's supposed to be?
Yes, we are involved in a lot of real estate transactions. There are a lot of buyers sometimes that, doesn't even come to the Turks and Caicos to inspect the property, and they, hire us to go out and inspect the property, to, issue a condition survey report. So we look at all elements, whether it's, the mechanical, electrical, architectural. We produce a very extensive report on whether it's a home they're purchasing. We'll produce a full condition survey that they can read and be satisfied with their purchase. We also carry out appraisals. That's both for land and for homes.
Sorry, let me stick a pin right there. I know your firm provides those services, but is this a part of quantity surveying, or is just additional services that's offered?
This is additional services. I have gone ahead and extended my expertise in the profession, and I am qualified to carry out valuations and appraisals as well.
No, I just wanted to make the difference between it, because we were talking about quantity surveying, so someone wouldn't have the bad thing. But yes, I'm glad to know that service is available through your firm. I'm sorry for cutting you across, but it's just things coming on my mind, because of course in real estate, people are looking for persons to do inspection of homes that they are not able to view themselves, to make sure of the structural contents, the mechanical, electrical contents before they make a purchase. So go ahead, yes.
And not only throughout the construction itself. So as I've mentioned, from inception, before construction start, we are aware of the responsibility of the quantity surveyor. We've gone through what are the responsibilities of a quantity surveyor throughout the construction process. We also are involved when a project is completed. That's called through the defects liability period. So the defects liability period is, usually 12 months after a project is completed. Any defects that arises, the contractor is responsible to remedy them, as long as it's a result of defective work, as a result of workmanship, or the responsibility of the contractor. So clients also appoint us to, once a project is finished, to go around and make sure that it is completed. So we do a punch list inspection to pick up any defects, pick up any works that we feel is incomplete, that the contractor needs to do, or even if a couple months within the defects liability period something isn't working, the client may call and say, is this as a result of poor workmanship? What is the issue? We come out and assess it and make sure that the contractor remedy that work. Not only remedy that work, but remedy it to the appropriate scope of works to avoid the issue from happening again. So as you can see, we're very well rounded. We've got to have a broad knowledge of construction itself, finance, contract, programs. So, quantity surveyors are very broad in terms of knowledge in the industry. Like I said, people tend to go on and qualify or specialize in a specific area themselves as well. Because we have contract law as our background, we may have some quantity surveyors that may go on to be adjudicators or mediators to focus specifically on construction disputes. You've got, some quantity surveyors that are just interested in the numbers crunching, and they go on to be just estimators and just, financial controllers. And, so there are specific avenues that you can go and specialize in, but they all fall under quantity surveying. And I want to stress, sorry for just going on this long response.
No, it's for me, I'm like absorbing all of this information. Go ahead.
I have to say these things while it's on my mind because I'll forget.
That's okay, go ahead.
Go on and on and on before I let you ask your next question or break. But I want to stress that a lot of people think that here specifically that quantity surveys are just, numbers guys, or I need an estimate, what's the cost of this? And I hope by the end of this show, you would have gotten, a wide range of knowledge within the profession itself to understand that we are not just number crunchers. Mm-hmm. That's the main background, that's our sole purpose, but there are a lot of other aspects to a construction project that can contribute to, financial impact. And we are responsible to manage them through all the avenues, contract, procurement, even to choosing the right guy to do the project. That's our responsibility. So I just wanted to stress that point really.
Okay. So let me ask this big question. We start thinking about all of this, and I'm a little guy on the street, and I'm thinking, okay, is this going to cost me a lot of money to hire a quantity surveyor? You don't have to give any numbers, but what is your take on cost for the little man on the street who wants to hire a quantity surveyor to make sure that their property is done correctly?
I'll say this. Money spent upfront will save you a lot of money down the line. So don't think of it as, an additional cost or, hey, I can do this myself. You would be surprised the amount of money that employing a quantity surveyor can save you if your project goes wrong. In terms of fees, it's not extraordinary. It depends on the scope of services you are employing us for. As you alluded to earlier, some clients may decide that we don't want you throughout the entire process. We feel like we got a grip to this. We just need you at the beginning to just give us your, expert advice on the cost of the project. Once you give us the cost and the numbers, we're okay to manage it. And that's fine. Or they may say, look, we need a contract drafted. I need to make sure that this contract covers all of my risk. Can you draft this contract for us? That's a one-off fee. That's a one-off fee to do an estimation for you. And these fees, they can range depending on the size or the scale of the project. So it's not something that's, overly expensive. But people tend to think that we need to be involved throughout the entire process. I would recommend that we do. But of course, we can agree and negotiate fees if we are employed throughout the duration of the project. But I would stress and say that it will cost you a lot of money down the line. One case in point, I was appointed at the end of a project. And this is an actual project here in Turks and Caicos whereby, at the end, the clients were approached by the contractor, and the contractor said, hey, you owe us excessive of $200,000. And I was appointed to go through all of these claims and assess whether it is, valid or reasonable or just claims. And, we went through the entire process of going through them all, going through the history of events, digging up all of the emails, and meeting with the contractor and the clients. And by the end of it, I think we were down to like 40 or 50,000. So, imagine you would have saved yourself, 150,000 if you just spent a couple thousand up front and got yourself a quantity surveyor. So it is important.
Yeah, I like the way you put it. Like you say, you think about the money that you could be saving versus think about the money you're spending up front. And this is something that we have discussed on the show previously, even in relation to attorneys. I know people may be tired of me talking about attorneys, but you cannot stress it enough. Sometimes when persons are trying to do it themselves, all they're thinking about, I'm saving costs. But when you make so many mistakes down the line, it costs you more if you had employed that attorney from the initial stage versus not doing so. And I know, like in the case of some attorneys, they have been really generous in working with customers and with their fees. And even some of them have went further as to put 1 or 2 people on a payment plan, those who they know are genuinely need the help. So like you said, that's a good thing. Don't think just about the money, but think about what you're going to save at the end of this project by hiring a quantity surveyor to help with your project. Because we have a lot of that sometimes happen when you try to do project on your own, where contractors may try to take advantage of persons who are not well versed about the process in terms of coming up with a price and getting their project completed in the correct way.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let me ask you, what makes for a good quantity surveyor? If I am to search for a quantity surveyor, I don't know who, I'm just thinking as a customer, I don't know where to start. I don't know how many quantity surveyors are on island or where to approach. When I start looking, what should I be looking for when I retain a quantity surveyor?
And that, believe it or not, that's actually a great question. I can start off by naming all of the qualities of a good quantity surveyor that you may look for, but that's standard stuff. That's common knowledge. What I would say is that there are institutions and qualifications out there that would have already done the work for you. So the first question you should ask yourself, is this person qualified? For example, I am a chartered quantity surveyor. What that means is that I am a member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. Now, being a member of that institution speaks for it all. It means that to be a member of that, you have to ascertain or have all of the qualifications, all of the experience, the knowledge, and expertise necessary to be a member. We are governed by ethics, code of conduct. At any given time, they can check my finances. We have to report to them, whether if we are convicted or we get in crime, we have to report to the board. So we are governed by all of these things by being a part of this Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. So if you ask someone who comes to do that service for you, are you RICS qualified? And if they say yes, that would have done your work already, your homework for you. So that's a good quantity surveyor. That's who you should be going to, because they not only are responsible for protecting your financial interests, they have to protect their professionalism and ethics whilst doing so. Because, it's a very small island, and often cases, ethics can be compromised because of who you know. And, we have to differentiate that and draw a line in the sand to make sure that that doesn't interrupt our professionalism and carrying out a project in the best interest of the client. So we are governed by the Institute and ensuring to do so. So in summary, that's what makes a good quantity surveyor. Because as you would imagine, the sort of things that could potentially occur by being so small here and everyone knows everyone, and if you're doing a job, if I'm doing a job for you and the contractor that I know, what is the budget? I want to come in and win the job. And, and I have to protect your interests and I have to protect my professionalism. So, I'm not allowed to give him that information. So there are things like that, ethics, that are very, very important when you're dealing with numbers and people's money. I can't stress it enough, and integrity is very important. But of course, whilst performing a service to the highest level of professionalism. So those are the things you look for. And it's a small industry. Everyone knows everyone. So, anyone giving you a recommendation can tell you, well, use this guy, use that guy. He's really good, or he's not going to mess around, or he's a very ethical person with integrity. He's not going to mess you. So your reputation says it all. That's really it. I always use this term, not chat, but that's basically That's what I would recommend that you do look for.
Well, I think that's spot on. Like you say, ethics and accountability is very important in every profession that we are looking at. We actually had a show about that before, talking about ethics. And even as a part of the Real Estate Association, we find that persons tend to gravitate to those agents who are part of the association because they know that they are being held, it has to be held responsible for persons as they come to them. And if anything happens, that they can report them to the association if for any reason that they are not treated in the way that they are supposed to be. I would ask one more question and then I'm going to leave a little space in case you have any comments that you would like to wrap up in terms of anything we've missed out about a quantity survey that you would want to share. Of course, we talked about the banks use quantity surveyors for cost analysis, et cetera. I just wanted to find out from you, asking you directly, that if you are one of the selected persons on the bank list that they would go to when they need these services for quantity surveyors around here.
Yes, I am on RBC's list. Recently been approved for First Caribbean list. Not yet on Scotia's, but that's a work in progress. But I am on RBC's and recently approved for First Caribbean as well. So, most of my services as well come from the banks and other financial institutions or lenders, like Meridian and other lenders as well. The lawyers, the real estate agents, the local population, developers, and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Okay. I know definitely that you are well versed in your expertise area, but I just want to reiterate it for persons to know that you have persons, like you say, these companies who are actually have you on their list, which says much to know that, hey, you are qualified to do this service as well. Okay. So do you have any closing words in terms of anything we've missed out, what we should know about a quantity surveyor, or anything that should linger in our minds for the small person who's building, or anyone who's even building or development, that you would want to say to them?
I think we've had a very impressive conversation. I think we've covered a lot of grounds. I really enjoyed it. As you can see, I get really enthused about when I'm answering and responding. I get really excited about my profession, which is good, and which makes me quite good at what I do because I'm very passionate about it. And so I say that to say that anyone who has questions or is interested in being trained, or young apprentices that are coming out of high school or graduating and can't afford the opportunity to go and study abroad immediately, I'm open to train up young individuals. I've been working with a few young guys that I tend to keep under my wings and offer little assistance or apprenticeships too, because I do need the assistance as well. I urge you to reach out. My contact information is on the website. It's accessible to everyone. I am accessible to everyone, so please do reach out. Quantity surveying is a need here in the Turks and Caicos. I applaud a lot of young local persons who are just trying to make up their minds on what they want to do and what shall I study. I would say that the profession, it sounds like a lot of work, or it may deter you because all of these terms I'm throwing out there may sound a bit complicated or complex. It sounded the same to me, but once I got out there to university and realized what it is actually about, you may find a genuine interest in it. I started out in the construction industry very young. Sometimes as intern, as a laborer on site. So I've always had a passion for construction. I found out about the role of quantity surveyor later on. I was almost graduating high school, and it interested me. And I did my research, and I realized at that time there were like one or two local quantity surveyors, or one I think at the time. And I realized the shortage. I realized the need and the gap in the market. And I also realized the pay is decent money. So, all of those things had intrigued me. So I would say, if you're indecisive of what you want to study, reach out. I'm open to, having those sort of discussions or assist you with a choice of course. It doesn't have to be quantity surveying. It could be any of the other roles that I've mentioned, but I'm open for that. So that's pretty much it from my side of things. I had a great conversation with you. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to more of these type of discussions. So thank you for having me again.
Not a problem. One thing you have said, there is a shortage of quantity surveyors. So I'll say to anyone who's listening, please, if he reached out, if he stretched out his hand, please take the opportunity, reach out to him if you are interested in such a topic as quantity surveying. And obviously this country, Turks and Caicos, real estate is a big thing in the Turks and Caicos. Real estate is booming. People are coming here and buying. So obviously the services of a quantity surveyor is needed in the Turks and Caicos Islands and is necessary. So you can't go wrong with that, because a lot of people are looking at this destination for investments, for development. I'll say this, during COVID time, I know that a lot of developments were happening. And I spoke with one developer who was a bit concerned to know what was going to happen with his project. And just the other day, I contacted him saying that, I have a potential buyer. And his response to me was, we have put all sales on hold because we had so much interest in the project. It's like they have to stop and bill out all of that, which is just to show you that things is happening in real estate. And also, like you said, the services of a quantity surveyor is necessary because this is all new construction, which requires the assistance of a quantity surveyor. So your profession is really needed in the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Exactly. And it's needed long term. I mean, construction, you always need, infrastructural development. You always will be growing and development. So construction booms, and everyone knows next to, tourism, like the real estate and construction industries are heavy economic drivers of the Turks and Caicos. We contribute significantly to the GDP. So, that tells it all. And even when other industries are down throughout the entire pandemic, real estate and construction were ongoing. So, there's a need. So definitely jump on the opportunity whilst it's there.
Yes. So thank you once again, Mr. Durham. It was a pleasure as well. And just how you say you get excited sometimes, for me, when I'm talking real estate and I'm learning, my eyes light up. After the show, people say, okay, you had to open your eyes that wide, you have to smile that bright. But I just get excited talking about it. And most of all, understanding and learning about all of these things. We say we want the opportunity to know more. This is an opportunity for persons to know more about these professions out there. So what you want to be when you grow up and know what the need is in the Turks and Caicos Islands so you can go after those opportunities. So thank you once again. It was a pleasure having you on the show. And I would like to say to everyone who's listening, thank you for always listening, taking time out of your busy schedules. You leave from work, you turn on the program. So I really appreciate it. So until next time, and I will say I'm usually every 2 weeks, but next week I will be back because I'm supposing to have the planning department come back on the show. They have some very exciting news to share about the Sustainable Development Plan. So I'm looking forward also to the show next week. So until next week, I will say stay safe and remain blessed. Have a great afternoon. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this show belong solely to Let's Talk TCI Real Estate and not that of Keller Williams TCI or any of its affiliates. Any action you take upon the information provided on this show is strictly at your own risk. And Let's Talk TCI Real Estate guest or host will not be liable for any losses and damages in connection with the use of the material. I am not an investment advisor, broker, or dealer.